The drawing room dazzled after the darkness outside. Even with his eyes almost closed, Harry could make out the wide proportions of the room. A crystal chandelier hung from the ceiling, more portraits against the dark purple walls. Two figures rose from chairs in front of an ornate marble fireplace as the prisoners were forced into a room by the snatchers. "What is this?" A dreadfully familiar voice, uh, drawling voice of Lucius Malfoy fell upon Harry's ears. He was panicking now. He could see no way out, and it was easier, as his fear mounted, to block out Voldemort's thoughts, though his scar was still burning. "They say they've got Potter," said Narcissa's cold voice. "Draco, come here." Harry did not dare look directly into Draco, but he saw him opaquely, a figure slightly taller than he was, rising from an armchair, his face a pale and pointed blur beneath the white blonde hair. Greyback forced the prisoners to turn again, so as to face Harry directly beneath the chandelier. "Well, boy," rasped the werewolf. Harry was facing a mirror over the fireplace, a great gilded thing, in an intricately scrolled frame. Through the slits of his eyes, he saw his own reflection for the first time since leaving Grimmauld Place. His face was huge, shiny, and pink, every feature distorted by Hermione's jinx. His black hair reached his shoulders, and there was a dark shadow around his jaw. Had he not known that it was he who stood there, he would have wondered who was wearing his glasses. He resolved not to speak, for his voice for sure would give him away. Yet he still avoided eye contact with Draco as he later approached. "Well, Draco," said Lucius Malfoy. He sounded avid. Is it Harry Potter?" I can't be sure," said Draco, and he was keeping his distance from Greyback, and seemed to be scared of looking at Harry as Harry was of looking at him. "But look at him carefully. Look. Come closer." Harry had never heard Lucius Malfoy so excited. "Draco, if we are the ones who hand over Potter to the Dark Lord, everything will be forgiven." "Now we won't be forgetting who actually caught him, I hope, Mr. Malfoy," said Greyback menacingly. Of course not," said Lucius impatiently, and he approached Harry himself. Came so close to Harry's to see that the usual languid, pale face of sharp detail even through his swollen eyes. With his face as puffy mask, Harry felt as though he was peering out from between the bars of a cage. "What did you do to him?" Lucius asked Greyback. "How did he get into this state?" "That wasn't us." "Looks more like a stinging jinx to me," said Lucius. His eyes raked Harry's forehead. "There's something there," he whispered. "It could be the scar, stretched tight. Draco, come here. Look properly. What do you think?" Harry saw Draco's face close up now, right beside his father's. They were extraordinarily alike, except for that while his father looked beside himself with excitement, Draco's expression was full of reluctance, even fear. "I don't know," he said as he walked away towards the fireplace where his mother stood watching. "We had better be certain, Lucius," Narcissa called to her husband in the cold, clear voice. "Completely sure that it is Potter before we summon the Dark Lord. They say that is his." He was looking closely at the blackthorn wand. "But it does not resemble Ollivander's description. If we are mistaken, if we call back the Dark Lord here for nothing, remember what he did to Raoul and Davenant." "What about the mudblood, then?" growled Greyback. Harry was nearly thrown off his feet as the snatchers forced the prisoner to swivel around again, so that the light fell upon Hermione instead. "Wait," said Narcissa sharply. Yes. She was in Madame Malkin's with Potter. I saw her picture in the Prophet. Look, Draco, isn't this the Granger girl?" Maybe, yeah. But then, that's the Weasley boy?" shouted Lucius, striding around, bound the prisoners to face Ron. "It's them, Potter's friend. Draco, Look at him. Isn't Arthur Weasley's son? What's his name?" "Yeah," said Draco again, but his back to the prisoners. "It could be." The drawing-room door opened behind Harry. A woman spoke, and the sound of a voice wound Harry's fear to an even higher pitch. "What is this? What happened, Sissy?" Bellatrix Lestrange walked slowly around the prisoners and stopped on Harry's right, staring at Hermione through her heavily lidded eyes. "But surely," she said quietly, "this is the Mudblood girl. This is Granger." Yes, it's Granger," cried Lucius. "And beside her, we think Potter. Potter and his friends, caught at last." "Potter!" shrieked Bellatrix as she backed away to better take in Harry. "Are you sure? Well, then, the Dark Lord must be informed at once." She dragged her left sleeve back. Harry saw the dark mark burned into the flesh of her arm, and knew that she was about to touch it, to summon her beloved master. "I was about to call him," said Lucius, and his hand actually closed upon Bellatrix's wrist, preventing her from touching the mark. "I shall summon him, Bella. Potter has been brought into my house, and it is therefore upon my authority." "Your authority?" she sneered, attempting to wrench her hand from his grasp. "You lost your authority when you lost your wand, Lucius. How dare you? Take your hands off me." "This has nothing to do with you. You did not capture the boy." "Beg your pardon, Mr. Malfoy," interjected Greyback, "but it's us that caught Potter, and it's us that'll be claiming the gold." "Gold?" laughed Bellatrix, still attempting to throw off her brother-in-law, her free hand gripping in her pocket for her wand. "Take the gold, filthy scavenger. What do I want with gold? I seek only the honor of—" She stopped struggling, her dark eyes fixed upon something Harry could not see, jubilant at her capitulation. Lucius threw her hand from him and ripped up his own sleeve. "Stop!" Bellatrix said. "Do not touch it. We shall all perish if the Dark Lord comes now." Lucius froze, his index finger hovering over his own mark. Bellatrix strode out of Harry's limited line of vision. "What is that?" he heard her say. "Sword," grunted out of the side of the Snatchers. "Give it to me." "It's not yours, missus. It's mine. I reckon I found it." There was a bang and a flash of red light. Harry knew that the Snatcher had been stunned. There was a roar of anger from his fellows. Scabier drew his wand. "What do you think you're playing at, woman?" "Stupefy!" she screamed. "Stupefy!" And there was no match for her. Even though there were 4 of them against one of her, she was a witch, as Harry knew, a prodigious skill, and no conscience. She fell upon where they stood, all except Greyback, who had been forced into a kneeling position, his arms outstretched. Out of the corners of his eyes, Harry saw Bellatrix bearing down upon the werewolf, the sword of Gryffindor gripping tightly in her hand, her face waxen. "Where did you get this sword?" she whispered to Greyback, as she pulled his wand out of the unresisting grip. "How dare you?" he snarled, his mouth only thing he could move, as he was forced to gaze up at her. He bared his teeth. "Release me, woman!" "Where did you find this sword?" she repeated, brandishing it in his face. "Snape sent it to my vault in Gringotts." "It was in their tent," rasped Greyback. "Release me, I say!" She waved her wand, and the werewolf sprang to his feet, but appeared too weary to approach her. He prowled behind an armchair, his filthy, curved nails clutching its back. "Draco, move this scum outside," said Bellatrix, indicating the unconscious men. "If you haven't got the guts to finish them, then leave them in the courtyard for me." "Don't you dare speak to Draco like," said Narcissa furiously, as Bellatrix screamed. "Be quiet! The situation is graver than you could possibly imagine, Sissy. We have a very serious problem." She stood, panting slightly, looking down at the sword, examining its hilt. Then she turned to look at the silent prisoners. "If it is indeed Potter, he must not be harmed," she muttered, more to herself than the others. "The Dark Lord wishes to dispose of Potter himself, but if he finds out, I must know. If it is indeed Potter, She turned back to her sister again. The prisoners must be placed in the cellar while I think of what to do. This is my house, Bella. You don't give me orders in my— Do it! You have no idea what the danger we are in, shrieked Bellatrix. She looked frightened, mad, and a thin stream of fire issued from her wand and burned a hole into the carpet. Narcissa hesitated for a moment, then addressed the werewolf. Take these prisoners down to the cellar, Greyback. Wait, said Bellatrix sharply. All except for the mudblood. Greyback gave a grunt of pleasure. No, Ron shouted. You can have me. Keep me. Bellatrix hit him across the face. The blow echoed around the room. If she dies under questioning, I'll take you next, she said. Blood traitor is next to mud blood in my book. Take them downstairs, Greyback, and make sure they are secure. But do nothing more to them yet. She threw Greyback's wand back at him, then took a short silver knife from underneath her robes. She cut Hermione free from the other prisoners and dragged her by her hair into the middle of the room, while Greyback forced the rest of them to shuffle across into another room, into the dark passageway. His wand held out in front of him, projecting an invisible and irresistible force. Reckon she'll let me have a bit of the girl when she's finished with her? Greyback crowed as he forced them along the corridor. I'd say I'd get a bite or two, wouldn't you, Ginger? Harry could feel Ron shaking. They were forced down into a steep flight of stairs, still tied back to back, in danger of slipping and breaking their necks at any moment. At the bottom of the heavy door, Greyback unlocked with a tap of his wand, then forced them into the dark, musty room, and left them in total darkness. The echoing bang of the slamming cellar door had not died away from there when there was a terrible, drawn-out scream from directly above them. Hermione! Ron bellowed, as he started to writhe and struggle against the ropes tying them together so that Harry staggered. Hermione! Be quiet, Harry said. Shut up, Ron. We need to work out a way. Hermione! We need to plan. Stop yelling. We need to get these ropes off. Harry? Came a whisper through the darkness. Ron, is that you? Ron stopped shouting. There was a sound of movement close by them when Harry saw a shadow moving closer. Harry? Ron? Luna? Yes, it's me. Oh no, I didn't want you to be caught. Luna, can you help us get these ropes off? Said Harry. Oh yes, I expect so. There's an old nail we use if you need to break anything. Just a moment. Hermione screamed again from overhead, and they could hear Bellatrix screaming too. But her words were inaudible, and Ron shouted again, Hermione! Hermione! Mr. Ollivander, Harry could hear Luna say, Mr. Ollivander, have you got the nail? If you just move over a little bit, I think it is beside the water jug. She was back within seconds. We'll need to stay still, she said. Harry could feel her digging at the ropes through fibers and work the knots free. From upstairs they heard Bellatrix's voice. I'm going to ask you again. Where did you get the sword? Where? We found it. Please. Hermione screamed again. Ron struggled harder than ever, and the rusty nail slipped into Harry's wrist. Ron, please stay still, Luna whispered. I can't see what I'm doing. My pocket, said Ron. In my pocket, there's a deluminator. It's full of light. A few seconds later, there was a click, and the luminescent spheres of the deluminator had sucked from the lamps in the tent flew into the cellar. Unable to rejoin their sources, they simply hung there, like tiny suns flooding the underground room with light. Harry saw Luna, all eyes in her white face, and the motionless figure of Ollivanders, the wand maker, curled up on the floor in the corner. Craning around, he caught sight of their fellow prisoners. Dean and Griphook, the goblins, seemed barely conscious, kept standing by the ropes that bound him to the humans. Oh, that's much easier. Thanks, Ron, said Luna, and she began hacking at the bindings again. Hello, Dean. From above came Bellatrix's voice. "You're lying, filthy mudblood, and I know it. You've been inside my vault at Gringotts. Tell the truth! Tell the truth!" Another terrible scream. "Hermione!" "What else did you take? What else have you got? Tell me the truth, or I swear I'll run you through with the knife." "There!" Harry felt the ropes fall away and turned. Rubbing his wrists, he saw Ron running around the cellar, looking up at the low ceiling, searching for a trap door. Dean, his face bruised and bloody, said thanks to Luna, and stood there shivering. But Griphook sank to the cellar floor, looking groggy and disoriented, many welts across his swarthy face. Ron was now trying to disapparate without a wand. "There's no way out, Ron," said Luna, watching his fruitless efforts. "The cellar is completely escape-proof. I've tried. At first, Mr. Ollivander had been here for a long time, but he's tried everything." Hermione was screaming again. The sound went through Harry like physical pain. Barely conscious of what fierce prickling of a scar, he was too startled to run around the cellar, feeling the walls, for he hardly knew what, knowing in his heart that it was useless. "What else did you take? What else? Answer me! Crucio!" Hermione's screams echoed off the walls upstairs. Ron was half sobbing as he pounded the walls with his fists, and Harry, in utter desperation, seized Hagrid's pouch from around his neck and groped inside it. He pulled out Dumbledore's snitch and shook it, hoping, for he did not know what. Nothing happened. He woven the broken halves of the Phoenix wand, but they were lifeless, and mere fragments fell sparkling to the floor, and he saw a gleam of brightest blue. Dumbledore's eyes were gazing up at him in the mirror. "Help us!" he yelled in mad desperation. "We're in the cellar of Malfoy Manor. Help us!" His eyes blinked and was gone. Harry was not even sure that he had really been there at all. He tilted the shard of the mirror out this way and that, and saw nothing reflected there but the walls and ceilings of their prison. And upstairs Hermione was screaming, worse than ever. And next to him Ron was bellowing, "Hermione! Hermione!" "How did you get into my vault?" they heard Bellatrix scream. "Did that dirty little goblin in the cellar help you?" "We only met him tonight," Hermione sobbed. "We've never been inside your vault. It isn't a real sword. It's just a copy. It's just a copy." "A copy?" screeched Bellatrix. "Oh, a likely story. But we could find out easily," came Lucius's voice. "Draco, fetch the goblin. He could tell us whether the sword is real or not." Harry dashed across the cellar to where Griphook was huddled on the floor. "Griphook," he whispered into the goblin's pointed ear, "you must tell them that the sword is fake. They mustn't know that was the real one. Griphook, please." He could hear something scuttling down the cellar doors. Next moment, Draco, shaking his voice, spoke from behind the door. "Stand back! Line up against the wall! Don't try anything, or I'll kill you." They did as they were bidden. As the lock turned, Ron clicked the deluminator, and the lights flicked back into his pockets, restoring the cellar's darkness. The door flew open. Malfoy marched inside, wand held in front of him, pale and determined. He seized the little goblin by the arm and backed out again, dragging Griphook with him. The door slammed shut, and at the same moment the loud crack echoing inside the cellar. Ron clicked the deluminator. 3 balls of light flew back into the air from his pocket, revealing Dobby, the house elf, who had just apparated into their midst. "Dob?" Harry hit Ron on the arm to stop him from shouting, and Ron looked terrified at his mistake. Footsteps crossed the ceiling overhead, Draco marching Griphook to Bellatrix. Dobby's enormous tennis-ball-shaped eyes were wide. He was trembling from his feet to the tips of his ears. He was back in this home of his old masters, and it was clear that he was petrified. "Harry Potter?" squeaked the tiniest quiver of the voice. "Dobby has come to rescue you." "But how did you—" An awful scream drowned Harry's words. Hermione was being tortured again. He cut to the essentials. Did you disapparate out of the cellar? He asked Dobby, who nodded, his ears flapping. And you can take humans with you? Dobby nodded again. Right, Dobby. I want you to grab Luna, Dean, and Mr. Ollivander and take them to Bill and Fleur, said Ron. Shell Cottage, on the outskirts of Tinworth. The elf nodded for the third time. And then come back, said Harry. Can we do that, Dobby? Of course, Harry Potter, whispered the little elf. He hurried over to Mr. Ollivander, who appeared to be barely conscious. He took one of the wand-maker's hands into his own. He held out the other to Luna and Dean, and neither one of them moved. Harry, we want to help you, Luna whispered. We can't leave you here, said Dean. Go, both of you. We'll see you at Bill and Fleur's. As Harry spoke, his scar burned worse than ever, and for a few seconds he looked down, not upon the wand-maker, but on another man who was just as old, just as thin, but laughing scornfully. Kill me, then, Voldemort. I welcome death, but my death will not bring you what you seek. There is so much you do not understand. He felt Voldemort's fury, but as Hermione screamed again, he shut it out, returning to the cellar and the horror of his own present. Go! Harry belched at Luna and Dean. Go! We'll follow. Just go! They caught hold of the elf's outstretched fingers. There was another loud crack, and Dobby, Luna, and Dean, and Ollivander vanished. What was that? Shouted Lucius Malfoy from over their heads. Did you hear that? Was that the noise in the cellar? Harry and Ron stared at each other. Draco, no. Call Wormtail. Make him go check. Footsteps crossed the room overhead, and there was a silence. Harry knew that the people in the drawing room were listening for more noises from the cellar. We're going to have to try and tackle him, he whispered to Ron. There was no choice. The moment anyone entered the room and saw the absence of 3 prisoners, they were lost. Leave the lights on, Harry added as he heard someone ascending the top of the outside of the door, then backed against the wall, the other side of it. Stand back, came Wormtail's voice. Stand back from the door. I am coming in. The door flew open. For a split second, Wormtail gazed into an apparently empty cellar, ablaze with light from the 3 miniature suns floating in midair. Then Harry and Ron launched themselves upon him. Ron seized Wormtail's arm and forced it upward. Harry slipped a hand to his mouth, muffled his voice. Silently they struggled. Wormtail's wand emitted sparks. His silver hand closed around Harry's throat. What is it, Wormtail? Called Lucius Malfoy from above. Nothing, Ron called back in a plausible imitation of Wormtail's wheezy voice. All fine. Harry could barely breathe. You're going to kill me, Harry choked, attempting to prise off the metal fingers. After I saved your life? You owe me, Wormtail. The silver fingers slackened. Harry had not expected it. He wrenched himself free, astonished, keeping his hand over Wormtail's mouth. He saw the rat-like man's small watery eyes widen with fear and surprise. He seemed just as shocked as Harry at what his hand had just done, at the tiny merciful impulse it had betrayed, and he continued to struggle more powerfully, as though to undo the moment of weakness. And, we'll have that, whispered Ron, tugging Wormtail's hand over his other. Helpless, wandless, Pettigrew's pupils dilated in terror. His eyes had slid from Harry's face to something else. His own silver fingers were moving inexorably towards his own throat. No! Without pausing to think, Harry tried to drag back the hand, but there was no stopping it. The silver tool that Voldemort had given his most cowardly servant had turned upon its disarmed and useless owner. Pettigrew was reaping his reward for his hesitation, his moment of pity. He was being strangled before their eyes. No! Ron had released Wormtail too, and together he and Harry tried to pull the crushing metal fingers from around Wormtail's throat, but it was no use. Pettigrew was turning blue. Relatio, said Ron, pointing the wand at the silver hand, but nothing happened. Pettigrew dropped to his knees, and at the same moment Hermione gave a dreadful scream from overhead. Wormtail's eyes rolled upwards in a purple face. He gave a last twitch and was still. Harry and Ron looked at each other, then leaving Wormtail's body on the floor behind them, ran up the stairs and back into the shadowy passage leading to the drawing room. Cautiously they crept along it. They reached the drawing room door, which was ajar. Now they had a clear view of Bellatrix looking down at Griphook, who was holding Gryffindor's sword in his long-fingered hands. Hermione was lying at Bellatrix's feet. She was barely stirring. "Well," Bellatrix said to Griphook, "is this the true sword?" Harry waited, holding his breath, fighting against the prickling of his scar. "No," said Griphook, "it is the fake." "Are you sure?" panted Bellatrix. "Quite sure." "Yes," said the goblin. Relief broke across her face, all tension drained from it. "Good," she said, and with a casual flick of her wand she slashed another deep cut into the goblin's face, and he dropped with a yell at her feet. She kicked him aside, and now, she said in a voice that burst with triumph, "We call the Dark Lord," as she pushed the back of her sleeve and touched her forefinger to the dark mark. At once, Harry's scar felt as though it had split open again. His true surroundings vanished. He was Voldemort, and the skeletal wizard before him was laughing toothlessly at him. He was enraged at the summon he felt. He had warned them. He had told them to summon him for nothing less than Potter. If they were mistaken. "Kill me, then," demanded an old man. "You will not win. You cannot win. That wand will never, ever be yours." And Voldemort's fury broke. The burst of green light filled the prison room, and frail old body was lifted from its hard bed and then fell back lifeless. And Voldemort returned to the window, his wrath barely controllable. They will suffer his retribution if they have no good reason for calling him back. "And I think," said Bellatrix's voice, "we can dispose of the mudblood. Greyback, take her if you want her." "No!" Ron burst into the drawing room. Bellatrix looked around, shocked. She turned her wand to face Ron instead. "Expelliarmus!" he roared, pointing Wormtail's wand at Bellatrix, and hers flew into the air and was caught by Harry, who had sprinted after Ron. Lucius, Narcissa, Draco, and Greyback wheeled about. Harry yelled, "Stupefy!" and Lucius Malfoy collapsed onto an hearth. Jets of light flew from Draco's, Narcissa's, and Greyback's wands. Harry threw himself to the floor, rolling behind a sofa to avoid them. "Stop, or she dies!" Panting, Harry peered around at the edge of the sofa. Bellatrix was supporting Hermione, who seemed to be unconscious, and was holding her short silver knife to Hermione's throat. "Drop your wand," she whispered. "Drop them, or we'll see exactly how filthy her blood is." Ron stood rigid, clutching Wormtail's wand. Harry straightened up, still holding Bellatrix's. "I said drop them!" she screeched, pressing the blade into Hermione's throat. Harry saw beads of blood appear there. "All right," he shouted, and he dropped Bellatrix's wand onto the floor at his feet. Ron did the same with Wormtail's. Both raised their hands to shoulder height. "Good," she leered. "Draco, pick them up. The Dark Lord is coming. Harry Potter, your death approaches." Harry knew it. His scar was bursting in the pain of it, and he could feel Voldemort flying through the sky from far away, over a dark and stormy sea. He soon would be close enough to apparate to them, and Harry could see no way out. "Now, said Bellatrix softly, as Draco hurried back to her with the wands. "Sissy, I think we ought to tie these little heroes up again. While Greyback takes care of Miss Mudblood, I'm sure the Dark Lord will not begrudge you the girl, Greyback, after what you have done tonight." At the last word, there was a peculiar grinding noise from above. All of them looked up at the same time to see a crystal chandelier tremble, and then, with a creak and an enormous jiggling, it began to fall. Bellatrix was directly beneath it. Dropping Hermione, she threw herself aside with a scream, and the chandelier crashed to the floor, an explosion of crystal and chains, falling on top of Hermione and the goblin, who still clutched the sword of Gryffindor. Glittering shards of crystal flew in all directions. Draco doubled over, his hands covering his bloody face. As Ron ran to pull Hermione out of the wreckage, Harry took his chance. He leapt over the armchair and wrestled the 3 wands from Draco's grip, pointing all of them at Greyback, and yelled, "Stupefy!" The werewolf was lifted off his feet and by the triple spell, flew up to the ceiling, and then smashed to the ground. As Narcissa dragged Draco out of the way of further harm, Bellatrix sprang to her feet, her hair flying as she brandished the silver knife, but Narcissa had directed her wand at the other doorway. "Dobby!" she screamed, and even Bellatrix froze. You dropped the chandelier!" The tiny elf trotted into the room, his shaking finger pointing at his own mistress. "You must not hurt Harry Potter," he squeaked. "Kill him, sissy!" shrieked Bellatrix, but there was another loud crack, and Narcissa's wand flew into the air and landed on the other side of the room. "You dirty little monkey!" Bellatrix bawled. "How dare you take the witch's wand? How dare you defy your masters?" "Dobby has no master," squealed the elf. "Dobby is free elf, and Dobby has come to save Harry Potter and his friends." Harry's scar was blinding him with pain. Dimly he knew that he had moments, seconds before Voldemort was with them. "Ron, catch and go," he yelled, throwing one of the wands at him. Then he bent down to tug Griphook out of under the chandelier, hoisting a groaning goblin who still clung to the sword. Over one shoulder, Harry seized Dobby's hand and spun on the spot to disapparate. As he turned into darkness, he caught one last view of the drawing room. On the pale frozen figure of Narcissa and Draco, on the streak of red light, was Ron's hair, and a blur of flying silver. And Bellatrix's knife flew across the room at the place where he was vanishing. Bill and Fleur, Shell Cottage, Bill and Fleur's. He had disapparated into the unknown. All he could do was repeat the name and the destination in a hope that it would suffice to take him there. The pain in his forehead pierced him, and the weight of the goblin bore down upon him. He could feel the blade of Gryffindor's sword bumping against his back, Dobby's hand jerking in his. He wondered whether the elf was trying to take charge, to pull him into the right direction. He tried by squeezing the fingers to indicate that he was fine with him. And then he hit the solid earth, smelled salty air. Harry fell to his knees, relinquishing Dobby's hand, and attempted to lower Griphook gently to the ground. "Are you all right?" he said to the goblin, stirring. But Griphook merely whimpered. Harry squinted around through the darkness. There seemed to be a cottage a short way under the wide starry sky, and he thought he saw movement outside it. "Dobby, is this the Shell Cottage?" he whispered, clutching the 2 wands as he had brought from Malfoy's, ready to fight if he needed to. "Have we come to the right place, Dobby?" He looked around. The little elf stood from him. "Dobby?" The elf swayed slightly, stars reflected in his wide, shining eyes. Together he and Harry looked down at the silver hilt of the knife protruding from the elf's heaving chest. "Dobby! No! Help!" Harry bellowed towards the cottage, towards people moving there. "Help!" He did not know or care whether they were wizards or muggles, friends or foes. All he cared about was that the dark stain was spreading across Dobby's front, and that he had stretched out his thin arms to Harry with a look of supplication. Harry caught him, laid him sideways on the cool grass. "Dobby, no! Don't die! Don't die!" The elf's eyes found him, and his lips trembled with the effort from his words. "Harry Potter?" And then, with a little shudder, the elf became quite still, and his eyes were nothing more than great glassy orbs, sprinkled with light from the stars they could not see. Good night, guys.